Hey guys! Imagine waking up to the searing Egyptian sun, your mouth full of sand, your back already aching from yesterday's labor, and the foreman screaming something about quota. You haven't even stood up yet, and you already regret being born into the wrong millennium. Welcome to the glamorous life of pyramid construction, where you're paid in bread, your tools are rocks, and your coworkers die of heat stroke before lunch. You think your 9 to 5 is bad? Honey, you're about to wish you had a boss who emails you at midnight. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. Let's set the stage. It's ancient Egypt, baby. Somewhere between 2600 and 2500 BCE, the Old Kingdom, the golden age of pyramid building. Pharaoh Khufu's feeling ambitious. He wants to be remembered for eternity, and naturally that means forcing tens of thousands of men to build a giant triangular death monument in the desert. And guess what? You just got recruited. Not as an architect, not even as a stonemason. No, you're a hauler. A humble meatbag responsible for dragging 2.5-ton limestone blocks up ramps made of more sand than structural integrity. Oh, and forget about health benefits, labor laws, or hydration breaks. You've got one job. Don't die before you move your quota of stones. Let's begin your first and possibly last day on the job. You wake up in a makeshift workers' village just outside Giza. Technically, you're not a slave. Ancient Egypt was complex like that. You're a conscripted peasant who's here for corvée labor, which is ancient Egyptian for unpaid seasonal hell. Maybe your village owed grain taxes. Maybe you mouthed off to a tax collector. Maybe you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Doesn't matter, you're here now. Your bed is a blanket of straw on hardened dirt. There are lice, there is snoring. There is a man next to you who smells like he's been fermenting under the sun since the Nile first flooded. You rise before dawn because the overseer has a stick and he's not afraid to use it. Breakfast, a bowl of beer-soaked bread mash that tastes like yeast and despair. You're handed a wooden lever, a length of rope, and a linen kilt so short it might get you arrested in modern times. Sunblock? Never heard of it. Shoes? What are you, royalty? No, your bare feet meet the scorching sand with every agonizing step. Now it's time to march out to the site. The Giza Plateau is a vision of organized chaos. Men scream, oxen grunt, ramps snake upward toward the half-finished pyramid, and dust chokes the air like a cruel second atmosphere. The limestone blocks are being dragged across wooden sleds coated with water to reduce friction. Yes, that's your job. No, you don't get gloves. Let's talk about the stones. Each block is about 2.5 tons. That's the weight of an SUV. If SUVs were shaped like coffins and designed to kill your spine. You, along with a dozen equally miserable souls, grab onto a rope and start hauling. You lean, pull, gasp, sweat, and curse every decision that led you to this point. Your skin is already blistering. Your muscles scream. The sun is now in full, merciless bloom, and there's no shade. Someone vomits. Another collapses. The overseer makes a note and moves on. Replacements are easy to find. No one stops. The block must move. Let's pause here for a fun fact. The Great Pyramid consists of about 2.3 million blocks. Multiply your suffering by millions, and you'll start to understand the scale of this lunacy. Lunchtime. Just kidding. There's no lunch break. You do get a moment to chew on some onions and garlic, maybe a few figs, and a cup of watered-down beer that tastes like wet hay and disappointment. Your teeth are worn down from the sand embedded in your bread, but that's fine. Ancient Egyptians didn't expect their teeth to last past 30 anyway. Tooth decay was basically a national pastime. Your coworkers are a mix of conscripted farmers, seasonal laborers, and some poor souls who genuinely think this work earns them divine favor. You'd roll your eyes if they weren't already caked with dust. One guy insists Khufu will personally reward him in the afterlife. Another has passed out next to a wheelbarrow, and no one's entirely sure if he's breathing. The afternoon shift begins. You are now responsible for moving the same block up an incline that defies physics and reason. The ramps leading to the higher tiers are steep, and the sled keeps slipping. You're given a goat bladder of water to share with 3 others. It's warm and tastes like goat bladder. By hour 8, you've sunburned through your kilt. Your back is one giant cramp, and your feet are shredded. You're starting to hallucinate that the Sphinx is watching you and shaking its head in pity. Then comes the worst part, block placement. A priest and overseer direct you to nudge the block into its designated spot with astonishing precision, like millimeter level alignment. If you screw it up, the block gets chipped, and guess what? You get to drag a replacement from the quarry, which is miles away. You shove, you curse, you cry. The priest tells you this is all for Ma'at, the concept of cosmic balance and divine order. You wonder if Ma'at includes your impending hernia and possible death. Evening descends like a smothering blanket. The sun finally retreats, but the heat lingers in the stone. Your body is wrecked, your hands are raw, and your soul has left your body hours ago. Dinner, more bread, more beer. Your calorie intake is just enough to keep you alive and angry. A rat scurries across your sleeping mat. You name it Khufu out of spite. Tomorrow you'll do it all over again and again, for 3 months, maybe more. And when you finally return home to your village, assuming you survive, you'll be weaker, older, and haunted by dreams of sliding blocks and sunstroke. And here's the kicker. When modern tourists come to Giza and marvel at the pyramids, they won't know your name. No statue, no inscription, no monument. Just dust and bones buried beneath the glory of empire. But hey, you built a wonder of the world, so there's that. Let's say, somehow, miraculously, you survived day 1. Congrats. Your body feels like it was used as a battering ram. Your skin is peeling like old papyrus, and your hands look like they've been through a grain thresher. And you've got at least 89 more days of this back-breaking pyramid gig left. Assuming you don't get heat stroke, crushed by limestone, or simply disappear in a sandstorm. Let's dive into day 2, also known as, congratulations, you're now officially broken. The morning is cruel. You wake up coughing from the dust caked in your lungs, and you can barely sit upright without whimpering. But there's no such thing as calling in sick in ancient Egypt. If you don't show up at the ramp, the overseer sends someone to drag you out by your kilt. And if you die mid-task, don't worry, they'll just toss you into the sand and replace you before your body cools. You limp to your station, where today's assignment awaits. Transporting granite blocks, that's right. Yesterday's limestone was the warm-up. Granite is denser, heavier, and a lot less cooperative. It doesn't care about your feelings. Where does granite come from? From Aswan, nearly 500 miles away. These blocks are floated down the Nile on massive wooden boats, which are themselves miracles of ancient engineering and sheer desperation. You're not responsible for that part, thank the gods. But once they arrive, you and your crew of living casualties get to unload them like sad, sunburnt ants trying to carry microwaves up a hill. Today's fun detail. The granite blocks are being used for the inner chambers and sarcophagus rooms, the fancy parts of the pyramid. That means more priestly supervision, more rituals, more pressure. One misstep and someone accuses you of angering the gods. You don't want to anger the gods, especially not the god of architecture, whose job seems to be making your life geometrically worse. You and a dozen other unfortunate souls grab your ropes and start dragging the block along a slick, watered-down path that is only slightly less dangerous than walking across boiling soup with no shoes. The block groans. Your joints creak. The sun is already high. You've been awake for 3 hours, and you're already begging for death. Suddenly, the sled hits a bump. The block shifts. Your foot is pinned for half a second. You scream, but it's too late. 2 toes are now flatter than your hopes. A nearby scribe jots something down, not your name. Just a note to fetch a replacement worker when you inevitably pass out. You don't even get a bandage. Around noon, a cloud passes overhead, and everyone gasps like they've seen the face of Ra. Shade, blessed, temporary shade. You use the moment to chew your garlic paste and stare blankly into the horizon, wondering how one civilization could produce such profound beauty through such unrelenting agony. But break time's over, worm. Back to hauling. Let's now talk about ancient tools, or rather, the lack thereof. You've got copper chisels, soft, dull, and need constant resharpening. You've got dolerite hammers, basically rocks used to smash other rocks, and ramps, so many ramps. Ramps of sand, ramps of limestone chips, ramps made of pure frustration. What about pulleys or cranes? No such luck. The wheel existed but wasn't used for heavy lifting here. Everything is done through manpower, meaning your power, meaning your spinal column, which now feels like it's being slowly zippered open by each boulder you drag uphill. Your shift ends just before sunset, but there's a new horror, night duty. Yes, on special occasions, like when the Pharaoh's divine timeline is at risk. Some workers are assigned to torchlit construction. It's eerie, it's disorienting, and it's basically impossible. You squint in the flickering firelight, trying not to trip over tools, stones, or your own ego. The desert gets cold at night, which you'd think is a blessing. It isn't. It's like going from slow roast to freezer burn in the same hour. But at least you get to meet the mosquitoes. Yes, they're here. And they've brought friends. Swarms of bloodthirsty Nile bugs feast on your exposed arms and legs like it's a state banquet. One guy next to you is so covered in welts he looks like he lost a fight with an angry pomegranate. By the time you're dismissed, you're shaking from exhaustion. You stumble back to the village with the gait of someone who's aged 40 years in 2 days. Someone offers you beer. You thank them like they just handed you immortality. You down it, knowing full well it might be spiked with grit and spoiled grain. You no longer care. You collapse into your bed of straw and dream about drowning in limestone. The dreams are better than your waking life. Let's pull back for a moment. One of the great historical debates is whether pyramid workers were slaves or paid laborers. The truth? It was complicated. Many were conscripted farmers during flood season, when the Nile made agriculture impossible. Others worked in exchange for food, housing, or exemption from taxes. Some even volunteered, yes, volunteered, because serving the pharaoh was seen as an honor. You, however, are not feeling the honor. You're feeling tendinitis, dehydration, and a complete emotional collapse. But wait, there's more. Your next assignment? Helping with the internal infrastructure? No, not the pretty ceremonial chambers. You're digging shafts and air ducts inside a 200-foot tall stone triangle that wants nothing more than to collapse on you like the fist of a vengeful god. You crawl into a narrow tunnel with barely enough space to turn around. It's pitch black except for the dim glow of oil lamps. The air is thick, hot, and stale. There's no ventilation. Oh, the irony. And you're given the world's saddest toolkit, a chisel, a hammer, and an insultingly tiny bag for rubble. Claustrophobic? Too bad. You're expected to chip away for hours. The noise is deafening. The heat is unbearable. One wrong move, and a chunk of ceiling could fall and instant mummify you. Every few minutes, someone must drag out the debris. That's done by the youngest and smallest workers, which is a nice way of saying children. Yes, child labor was part of the crew. Your little assistant may be 8 years old, barefoot, and more experienced than you. After several hours of this joyless mole life, you finally return to the surface, and the sun hits you like a punch to the soul. Your eyes burn, your skin peels anew. You fall to your knees and wonder, is this divine punishment or just standard ancient workplace policy? Dinner tonight is a stew of questionable origin and texture. Someone claims it's goat. Someone else says it's river eel. Honestly, it could be sand and you'd eat it anyway. You're too tired to care. The only upside, your blisters are starting to callus over. Congratulations, your body is mutating into a pyramid-compatible organism. One more surprise before bed, ritual inspection. A priest arrives, smears your forehead with Nile mud, and murmurs blessings meant to protect you from stone demons. Is this real religious practice or upper management nonsense? Either way, you pretend to take it seriously, because tomorrow you're back on the ramp, and if the gods are merciful, you might only lose one finger this time. So here you are, day 3 of your pyramid building nightmare. At this point, your body is a barely functioning sack of muscle cramps, sunburn, and existential regret. You no longer remember your old life, your village, or what it's like to sit down without something stabbing you. You are now one with the sand, the rope, and the blisters. You are pyramid trash, TM. And this morning, you've been assigned to the high crew. Sounds fancy, right? Spoiler, it's not. The high crew is responsible for hauling blocks to the upper tiers of the pyramid. You know, the part 100 plus feet in the air, where ramps are steeper, air is thinner, and one wrong step sends you tumbling into ancient construction history as that one guy who died loudly. You begin the day hauling a sled up a zigzagging ramp that makes no sense from a physics perspective, but all the sense in the world from a sadistic supervisor's perspective. The incline is so sharp you're essentially mountain climbing with a boulder. Your fellow haulers grunt, groan, and slip in the sand like doomed insects on a buttered slide. Someone behind you collapses, not because they're weak, but because they've been pushing granite uphill for 36 straight hours. The overseer doesn't yell. He just replaces the guy with another, fresher body like he's swapping out broken tools. No pause, no ceremony, just survival. At the top of the ramp, your arms are trembling. Your vision is blurry, and your knees feel like they've been replaced by roasted chickpeas. The priest overseeing the alignment gives you a nod and waves his hands in a ritual that supposedly blesses the placement of the stone. You know what would help more than a blessing: a winch, or a nap, or workers' compensation, but no. The stone must be perfectly aligned, or the gods will frown, the chamber will collapse, and the pharaoh will haunt you in the afterlife wearing something fabulous and angry. Once the block is in place, you crawl down like a wrung-out rag. But don't relax just yet, because it's time for your next thrilling task: mixing mortar. Ancient Egyptian mortar is made of gypsum, sand, and water. Simple stuff, but you're doing it by hand in giant troughs with your feet. Yes, your feet. Like you're making wine, but instead of grapes, it's sticky gray sludge that burns your skin and smells like swamp rot. You're basically a human paddle. You stomp, churn, and stir for hours. By the end, your legs are coated in gray gunk that might never come off. One guy slips, falls face first into the mix, and now smells like a cursed statue. Nobody helps, nobody can. Everyone is too tired and too close to giving up. Later that afternoon, you're sent to the quarry team. Oh, you thought the pyramid site was bad? Welcome to the extraction zone, where men hammer endlessly at cliff faces under the illusion that yelling makes the rocks break faster. Here, you're given a dolerite pounder, a fancy name for a rock that you use to smash another rock until your arms feel like soggy papyrus scrolls. It takes hours to dislodge a single usable stone. One single stone. And here's the real kicker. Once you pry it loose, you get to load it onto a sled and drag it several miles back to the pyramid. This is your version of bring your own corpse to work day. On the way back, the Nile wind kicks up a sandstorm. Visibility drops to 0. The air fills with tiny razors made of sand. You wrap your linen around your face, but it's useless. Every breath tastes like dry chalk. You trip, fall, and nearly crush your foot under the sled. The others drag you forward. No man left behind? No, just no man unpaid in misery. By evening, your muscles are twitching involuntarily. The medical tent, if you can call it that, is just a guy with a bone needle and some honey paste. If you're lucky, he'll spit on it first. If you're unlucky, it's your job to chew the herbs for someone else. Dinner tonight is special: roasted duck feet and lentil paste. Sounds nice, right? Until you realize the duck was probably dead before they cooked it, and the lentils have weevils that no one bothers to remove. You eat them anyway. Protein is protein. As you sit under the stars, your coworker Hori tells you that he once saw a man crushed flat by a stone block. He made a sound like a melon, he says, completely deadpan, while picking his teeth with a splinter of limestone. You laugh because if you don't, you'll cry. Then you realize Hori has only 3 fingers on one hand. You decide not to ask questions. Sleep comes in short, sweaty bursts. You wake up every hour from cramps, night sweats, or the guy next to you muttering prayers to Pida, the god of craftsmen. He's begging Pata to take him quickly and painlessly. You whisper that if he gets taken, please let you know what the afterlife is like. Specifically, does it have shade? Let's talk more about hierarchy now. Pyramid workers were ranked, of course. At the top, the architects and priests. They wore clean linen, sat under awnings, and carried writing tablets like smug little clipboards of doom. Then came the skilled workers, the stonecutters, toolmakers, and engineers. These guys actually knew what they were doing and had enough status to be buried with dignity. Then there was you, the unskilled laborer, the moving part, the thing that lifts and hauls and sweats and breaks. The state provided you with shelter and food, which is kind of them, considering they also slowly eroded your skeleton for the glory of a man who called himself a god. And let's not forget, while you toil in the sun, Khufu's enjoying lotus baths, incense massages, and live music in a palace cooled by servants fanning him with ostrich feathers. He's also probably ordering a second pyramid in case the first one doesn't have the right vibes. Meanwhile, you haven't blinked in 15 minutes because your eyelids are stuck together with dust. At some point in the day, you pass out. You collapse mid-haul, face first into the sand, like a poorly written hieroglyph. The foreman gives you a solid kick, not out of cruelty, but because he's checking if you're dead. You groan, that means you're alive. You get 1 water jug and 10 minutes in the shade, no more. You are a living wheel in a divine machine, and machines don't get naps. Later, you're moved to ramp repair duty. What's that? Oh, just reshaping a constantly eroding mountain of sand and crushed stone with wooden tools that splinter into your palms. It's like trying to patch a sinking ship using duct tape made of sadness. Every time someone hauls a block up the ramp, it crumbles a little more. So you're constantly fixing the very thing that's killing you. You ask someone how long this pyramid is supposed to take. They shrug. 20 years. You laugh so hard you nearly dislocate a lung. But here's the best part. You won't be working here for 20 years. You'll die long before that. Your bones will end up buried under the foundation, maybe ground into mortar. Your name will be forgotten. Your family will get nothing. And the only legacy you leave behind is a slightly smoother ramp curve and a few drops of sweat fossilized between blocks. Still, the priests say your labor pleases the gods. They promise that the afterlife awaits. Cool river breezes, endless fields, beer that doesn't taste like sock water. You nod along. Not because you believe them, but because arguing requires energy, and you've used all of yours, remembering how to breathe. Just before bed, the sun sets in a brilliant red blaze across the desert. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. You think, for one fleeting moment, that maybe all this pain is worth it, that maybe, just maybe, you're part of something eternal. Then someone sneezes limestone dust directly into your face, and you remember where you are. It's now day 4. You're no longer a person, you're a pyramid appendage, a heat-stroke hardened husk whose only functions are hauling, gasping, and regretting everything. Your sweat has salt burned through your linen kilt. You no longer speak in full sentences, just groans, grunts, and the occasional "Ra help me." And today, you're being rotated into the tomb crew. Oh yes, that's right. You've been promoted to help carve the interior chambers, passageways, and trap-laden corridors of the royal tomb. Not because you're special, but because 3 guys died yesterday, and you're just conscious enough to stand upright. The tomb is dark. It smells like centuries of damp stone and unwashed humanity. You're given a flickering oil lamp, a copper chisel duller than your hopes, and a slab of granite that apparently needs a divine message etched into it. By hand, without error. Hieroglyphs aren't just words, they're sacred. One mistake and the gods might cancel the pharaoh's afterlife reservation. So there's a scribe breathing down your neck the whole time, pointing out flaws in your carvings while he sips date wine and gently fans himself with a palm frond. You consider committing your first murder. Hours crawl by. The air is so thick you feel like you're carving underwater, and then the lamp goes out. Darkness, real terrifying pre-electricity darkness. You can't see your own hands, you can't breathe without tasting cave wall. You start panicking until someone relights the lamp with a whisper and a shrug, like this is completely normal. You crawl out hours later like an exhausted mole, only to be told you're needed for a ramp lubrication duty. No, that's not a joke. It's an actual task. See, when you're dragging multi-ton blocks up stone ramps, the friction is insane. So workers are constantly pouring water and oil onto the sand to keep things moving. Your job now is to balance on a narrow ledge with a goat bladder full of liquid and drip it onto the path, without slipping, falling, or drenching yourself. You fail on all 3 counts. You fall, you soak your feet. You earn a fresh round of sunburn and a chorus of curses from the hauling crew below. One man throws a handful of sand at you, which is honestly just petty. After lunch, which is a stale bread lump with a bonus pebble inside, you're dragged into a ritual preparation shift. The priests have decided the next cornerstone needs to be blessed with a sacred rite. What does that mean? You have to slaughter a bull, collect its blood, paint it onto the base of the block, chant the prayer in unison, and hold perfectly still while the pharaoh's representative does literally none of the work, but still gets all the credit. You're now ankle deep in blood, surrounded by flies, chanting a hymn you don't understand while swaying from heat stroke. You think you might be having a spiritual moment, or a full neurological breakdown. The line is blurry. The heat gets worse in the afternoon. Every stone reflects the sun back into your face like a mirror made of malevolent fire. You've given up trying to wipe sweat off. It just reappears instantly, like a punishment. You start to hallucinate that the blocks are whispering to you. Something about vengeance and rest. You nod, you understand. But you're not done yet. Oh no. Before the day ends, you're summoned to help haul the capstone. The capstone is the final piece, the apex, the very top of the pyramid. It's symbolic, sacred, and ridiculously heavy. No one knows exactly how they got those top stones up there. Scholars argue about spiral ramps, internal elevators, maybe even divine levitation. We're kidding, unless... But here, today, it's your job to help haul it up the last incline. Your muscles are jelly, your breath is sandpaper. Your will to live is on vacation. But still, you heave the rope. You pull with the strength of a man possessed, maybe by a ghost, maybe by spite, maybe by the unrelenting rage of someone who's been chewing gritty bread for 4 days straight. The capstone wobbles, everyone screams, the air goes still, and somehow, it lands in place. The priests cry, the foremen collapse, the workers cheer. You just drop to the ground and weep into the dust. You've done it. You've helped build the greatest structure in the ancient world, and no one will ever know your name. So what did we learn? We learned that building the pyramids wasn't magic. It was human misery in bulk. An empire built on aching backs, shredded hands, and the slow erosion of dignity in 110-degree heat. We learned that not a slave doesn't mean treated well, and that every one of those perfectly aligned stones probably has a few tears and bloodstains mixed in. We also learned that ancient Egypt was organized, brilliant, spiritual, and also completely fine with grinding thousands of workers into dust to make one man's afterlife dream home. And you didn't survive a day. You barely survived 4. But don't feel bad. Most people didn't. That's why they buried the workers' villages right next to the pyramids, not for convenience, but because too many of them never left. So next time you're scrolling through vacation pics of tourists in front of the pyramids, remember, you would have lasted about 6 hours out there before collapsing, crying, and being buried beneath someone else's glory. And now you know, you absolutely 100% wouldn't survive a day building the Egyptian pyramids. Want more cursed jobs from history? Stick around. The past has plenty of ways to ruin your week. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and tell me, would you have made it through the first shift? See you in the next historical breakdown. Stay hydrated, and maybe appreciate your office chair a little more. You ever thought your job was hard? Maybe your boss micromanages, your chair squeaks, or your Zoom calls run long? Well, buckle up, because today we're going to yeet you into a medieval quarry where safety is a myth. Your tools are glorified clubs, and the only promotion you're getting is an early grave under a chunk of flying granite. Let's paint the scene. It's Europe. Somewhere in the early 1300s, the Gothic cathedrals are shooting toward the sky. Nobles are screaming about arches, and someone needs to chisel all that glorious stone into fancy religious triangles. That someone is you. You don't work in the cathedral. You don't even live in the town. You've been dragged from your muddy village at the base of the hill to serve in the quarry, which is the medieval word for hell, but with more dust. You arrive at dawn, and it's already awful. The air is thick with powdery limestone. Your throat is raw, and your shoes, if you even have any, are wet, moldy, and filled with pebbles. Your foreman is a toothless man named Ewan, who speaks in grunts and communicates primarily through throwing small rocks at slow workers. You love him already. Your tools are laughable. A metal pick with a warped handle, a rusted chisel that belonged to someone who definitely died holding it, and a hammer that's more splintered than wood. PPE? Never heard of her. You're working shirtless, sleeveless, and one sneeze away from tetanus. You are assigned to a limestone shelf, and your job is to help carve, chip, and haul out as many blocks as your body can take before it gives out. You don't get paid per hour. You get paid by what you move, which means no block, no bread. You start hammering, trying to follow the lead of the guy next to you, who has one eye, no teeth, and looks like he's been aging in rock dust since the last solar eclipse. He slams the pick into the stone with a rhythm that screams, "I've given up." You mimic him, and instantly realize this is not like Minecraft. This is slow, loud, muscle-ripping torture. You're not mining ore, you're extracting building blocks. That means the stone must come out clean. No cracks, no chunks, just perfect rectangular death cubes that weigh as much as your entire extended family. Your arms ache, your back screams, your lungs are coated with chalk. And you've been working for 15 minutes. The sun rises higher, the pit turns into an oven. There is no shade, because why would you need shade in a pit full of rock that reflects sunlight like it wants you to die from heat stroke? Some guy above you shouts, "Behind!" and a stone the size of a roast pig comes tumbling down the cliffside, smashing into the gravel inches from your foot. Nobody checks if you're okay. They just laugh and say, "First time, eh?" You nod, hiding the fact that you just peed a little. Lunch is not a break, it's a fight. There are 2 loaves of black bread, a chunk of salt pork, and a communal bowl of onion soup that smells like it was brewed in someone's boot. You get what you can grab. Your hands are filthy, but so is everyone else's. You eat, chew stone grit, and try not to think about the rat you saw crawl under the food cart. After lunch, it's time for hauling. You and a few other doomed souls are handed wooden sleds and ropes and told to drag the blocks you helped carve up the path to the cart. The cart, naturally, is a half-broken thing with 2 good wheels and one that just spins for fun. The path is steep, muddy, slippery, and lined with brambles. You pull, slip, grunt, yell. The block moves an inch, then another. Your hands bleed, your legs shake. Someone next to you collapses, no one stops. Time is money. Or, more accurately, time is whether you eat or not tonight. By now, you understand the quarry isn't just dangerous, it's stupid dangerous. The work is unregulated. You are surrounded by unstable cliff faces, loose rock, jagged tools, and men who are too tired to care where they swing their hammers. You've already seen 3 people lose teeth from accidental swings. One guy got his hand crushed under a block and just kept working. He wrapped it in his tunic and used the other one. You take a break to refill your water jug. The water is warm and tastes like old coins, but it's wet, and that's enough. You see a man praying quietly beside a small stone shrine, asking for protection from St. Barbara, the patron saint of miners and people who die in explosions. You find this comforting and also deeply troubling. Now it's time for powdering, or what passes for precision in a medieval quarry. You're tasked with chiseling decorative edges onto blocks that are destined for some bishop's apse. You are not trained, you are not qualified, and you are definitely going to mess this up. You accidentally chip a corner off the first block. The overseer screams. You brace for a whipping, but he just sighs and makes you start over. "We'll use this one for the crypt," he mutters. You're not sure if that means the bishop's crypt or yours. Evening rolls in. The air cools, but your body is broken. Your muscles throb. Your hands are blistered and raw. Your face is streaked with sweat and stone dust. You can no longer tell where your skin ends and the quarry begins. You are a pile of barely contained agony. You are told to clean the tools before leaving. You wipe blood off the chisel. You pick stone fragments out of the hammerhead. You throw the pickaxe into a pile and watch as it lands with a clatter on top of other discarded, overused tools, like a graveyard of ruined ambition. Then you walk back to your lodging, which is a wooden shed with a dirt floor and 6 snoring bodies crammed together like pickled fish. You curl up on a straw sack that pokes you in places you didn't know had nerve endings, and fall asleep dreaming of cathedral arches rising into the sky. Arches you'll never see, made of stone that's slowly killing you. Because tomorrow it starts again, and every day brings new risks, collapsing cliffs, flying shards, poisonous dust, and yes, the very real chance that today's the day the rock finally crushes you. And still, somehow, this is considered honest, respectable labor. Welcome to the medieval quarry. Morning arrives in the quarry, but not gently. There's no sunrise birdsong or warm tea waiting for you. No, you're greeted by a foreman's boot kicking your side and a shouted reminder that if you're not hauling rock in the next 10 minutes, you're sleeping with the saints. And not in a spiritual way, more like buried under the next rock slide. Your body is stiff. Your skin is sunburned, scraped, and covered in a thin crust of limestone dust that never quite comes off. You stagger upright and discover you've been sleeping in someone else's vomit. You don't ask whose, nobody does. You shuffle out into the early light and inhale a lungful of cold, sharp morning air mixed with pulverized rock. Congratulations. You've now developed quarry lung. It's like asthma, but medieval, and nobody can pronounce it. You're coughing up chunks of something gray and possibly alive. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve and report for duty. Today, you're assigned to a cutting trench, which sounds surgical and precise, but is, in reality, a long gouge in the earth where teams of workers are tasked with extracting the longest slabs possible without cracking them or their own bones. The trench is steep, slick, and stupidly dangerous. You're lowered in with a frayed rope and a nod. No harness, no safety line. Just the hope that whoever's holding the other end of the rope doesn't sneeze or fall asleep. Once inside the trench, you're working in pairs with a 2-man saw, a huge, dull-toothed monstrosity with a personality of its own. One of you pushes, the other pulls, back and forth for hours, no talking. Just the squeal of the blade and the sound of your shoulder slowly detaching itself from your skeleton. The stone resists, it always resists. It's hard, unyielding, and embedded with layers of fossilized sea creatures from an ancient, forgotten world. You, on the other hand, are soft, squishy, and terribly replaceable. Every few minutes, you're expected to wet the blade with animal fat or dirty water to stop it from overheating. The bucket is a cracked clay bowl with half a rat floating in it. No one cares. You keep sawing. Your partner, a man named Arnulf, has one eye and a nose that looks like it was chiseled off by accident. He says nothing, but breathes heavily in a way that makes you deeply uncomfortable. At one point, he spits into the dust and says, "Saw took my brother, don't let it take you." Then he goes back to sawing, like a man trying to exorcise his demons with a hacksaw. After 3 hours, the slab finally splits. Cheers go up. The foreman grunts his approval. You both crawl out of the trench, covered in stone grit and each other's blood, and are told to move on to the cleaving station. This is where the stone is cleaned up, flattened, trimmed, and shaped. You're given a chisel the size of a dagger and a hammer that looks like it's made from a petrified goat's skull. The idea is to tap gently along the edge of the block to trim it into a perfect rectangular prism. You do this wrong, repeatedly. After the third chip flies off into the abyss and takes your dignity with it, the master carver walks over, looks at your work, and silently removes your tools. He hands you a broom. You are now on sweep duty. Sweeping in a quarry is like trying to tidy up during a tornado. Dust swirls constantly. You sweep one area only to have it instantly covered again by a passing cart, or the next idiot who drops his block and sends powdered limestone into orbit. You give up trying to make things look good. Instead, you focus on not passing out from the combination of heat, exhaustion, and the fact that you haven't pooped in 2 days because your body is running on fear and turnips. Speaking of turnips, it's lunch again. Today, it's a thin broth of turnip water and a slice of bread that you have to scrape mold off before eating. One man offers to trade his stale bread for your leather belt. You consider it. You sit under a crooked beam for shade and look around. Everyone here is broken, bent backs, twisted hands, eyes hollowed out by years of dust and abuse. You realize that some of these men have been in the quarry since they were children. Some were born near it, lived next to it, and will probably die under it. Suddenly, someone screams. A boulder has come loose on the upper slope. It tumbles down like an angry god, bouncing, smashing, crashing, until it connects with a worker who didn't see it coming. He doesn't scream, he doesn't move, he just stops existing. Everyone freezes. Then, after a pause that feels like a prayer, the foreman mutters, "Clear it!" and 2 others start digging the body out with their bare hands. You go back to sweeping. No one talks, no one cries. This is the quarry's unspoken rule. People die. Stones don't. Later that day, you're placed on cart loading. This means dragging finished blocks onto wooden sleds that are yoked to oxen. When the oxen aren't collapsed from exhaustion, which they usually are, you use the wooden levers to roll the blocks, which sounds clever until you realize the levers snap constantly, and no one has the skill or care to repair them properly. You bruise your thigh, sprain your wrist, and nearly drop a stone on your foot. But you finish, you load the block, you breathe, and then someone tells you to unload it again because it was the wrong block. You briefly consider becoming a bandit, or walking into the woods and never coming back. But then you remember the woods have wolves, and plague, and probably more unpaid labor. Before the day ends, you're ordered to the Edgework station, which is located fittingly at the very edge of the cliff. Your job here is to inspect stone faces for cracks and tag them with a mark, so they can be broken down into gravel. You're handed a pot of paint and a brush that's missing half its bristles. You inch toward the ledge, knees shaking. Below you, 100 feet of jagged death. You lean over, tap the stone, mark it, step back, repeat. A gust of wind slaps your face. You drop the pot, it shatters below. You lose your footing for a moment, just a flicker of imbalance, and your whole body goes cold. Arnulf, the saw man, grabs your arm with a grip like iron and pulls you back. He says nothing, just nods. He's done this before. You walk back to the shed in silence, still shaking. That night, the sky is clear. Stars gleam above like distant pinpricks of pity. You lie on your straw mat and whisper thanks to the heavens for not killing you today. You still ache. You still bleed. But for some strange reason, you feel proud. You made it another day, another block, another breath, and that's the cruelest part of quarry life. It breaks you, but it also convinces you it's an honor to survive. You wake up with a scream, not because of a nightmare, but because your shoulder has fused to the dirt floor. You've been lying on the same side for so long, and the straw has stuck to the half-dried blood seeping from yesterday's blister. You peel yourself upright, slowly, like a corpse trying to rejoin the living, and instantly regret it. Everything hurts. Your jaw aches from gritting your teeth. Your ribs hurt from coughing. Your legs feel like hollow tree trunks. You've never been more hydrated and more dehydrated at the same time. Welcome back to the Quarry. Today's task, the Blast Gang. Now, blast is a strong word. It conjures images of gunpowder and controlled demolition. But in the medieval quarry, blasting was a delicate art of absolutely winging it. You're handed a long iron wedge and a hammer, and told to insert the wedge into pre-cut grooves along a rock face. Then comes the fun part, hammering wedges in sequence until, crack, the block cleaves along the fault, or, doesn't, and just explodes into rock shrapnel. You approach the rock face. Your supervisor, a red-faced man named Hal, who has only one ear and zero patience, hands you your gear and says, "Don't blink, it'll kill you faster." You begin hammering, light taps, then harder. A rhythm develops, metal on stone, breath and sweat, echo and silence. Then suddenly, crack! Everyone ducks, you flinch. Dust explodes outward, and miraculously, the stone splits cleanly. Hal claps you on the back, nearly dislocating your spine. Lucky swing. Do it again. The second time, not so lucky. You strike, and instead of cracking neatly, the rock fractures sideways, sending a sharp piece the size of a hawk's beak straight into your thigh. You scream. You drop the hammer. Blood pours. Hal sighs. "Ah, you're a bleeder. Walk it off, or don't." A fellow worker rips off a strip of his tunic and ties it around your leg. It does nothing but look heroic. You limp back to the tool pile and pretend it doesn't feel like there's a dagger stuck in your meat. Welcome to injury culture in the medieval workplace. No doctors, no bandages, no rest days, just spit, string, and superstition. And speaking of superstition, you start to notice strange little stone dolls tucked into corners of the quarry. Tiny figures made of discarded chippings, shaped vaguely like humans, sometimes with little charcoal eyes. You ask a fellow worker what they are. "Luck dolls," he mutters, "offerings to the stone spirits. You leave one before you swing. If they like you, they won't crush you." You laugh. He doesn't. He points to a broken doll on the edge of a ledge. "Belonged to my cousin, dropped it, next day, gone under a slab. So now you make one, just in case. You carve a crooked little man from limestone, give it a nose, and hide it under your tool satchel. You're not superstitious, but you also haven't been crushed yet, and that counts for something. After lunch, bread, beer, and a fly, you're assigned to the pulley hill. If that sounds ominous, it's because it is. A team of men is building a makeshift wooden pulley tower over the deeper quarry pit to lift out larger blocks without using oxen. You're not sure who designed it. Probably no one. It's crooked. The supports are split. The rope is fraying like a madman's beard. And the guy in charge keeps yelling about structural balance while clearly drunk. You're sent to crank the wheel. Cranking the medieval winch is like turning the steering wheel of a burning ship. Slow, heavy, and utterly doomed. You and two others push the arm, walking in circles while a massive slab is hoisted into the air by a single, weeping rope. Then, snap. The rope breaks, the pulley tower lurches, the stone falls, screams, dust, silence. When it clears, the slab has missed everyone by inches, but the pulley rig has collapsed. The guy in charge is pinned under a beam, howling. Hal shrugs and says, "That's why we use men, not maps." You help dig the man out. He's alive, barely, with a shattered leg and one arm twisted the wrong way. He's carted off in a wheelbarrow used for rubble. You realize with a chill that there is no backup for any of this. No engineers, no replacement wood, no plan. If the winch fails, they just try again, with fewer men. You spend the rest of the day clearing debris. That means lifting broken logs, pushing shattered stone, and inhaling even more dust. Someone finds a crushed luck doll in the rubble. They bury it quietly. You wonder if it helped. Later, during the evening meal, a priest visits the quarry. He wears white robes that somehow remain clean. His sandals have gold buckles. He holds a silver cross and offers blessings to the laborers. He sprinkles holy water. He quotes scripture about the virtue of honest work. You stare at him. Your hands are bleeding. Your tunic is torn. You haven't bathed in weeks. You want to ask him if he's ever actually carried a stone, but you don't. You just nod, bow your head, and accept the blessing like everyone else. He leaves before sunset, carried away in a cart, pulled by oxen. You sleep that night with your leg wrapped in rags and your luck doll under your head like a pillow. You dream of rockfalls, of tunnels, of an endless pit with no sky. You wake up in the dark, certain you heard the stones whisper your name. And the worst part? You're starting to believe they might be real. It's your last day, not because you're quitting. There's no quitting. Not because you're being promoted, please. But because your body has reached the edge. Your arms are jelly. Your back is a curse. Your leg is one wrong step from total detachment. In your mind? Let's just say the rocks talk to you now, by name. You wake before sunrise. Not because you want to, but because a man is screaming outside your shed. He's been hit in the face with a flying shard of granite and is now blind in one eye. The foreman ties a cloth over it, pats him on the back and says, "You've still got the other one." Then the poor guy is dragged back to work. You sigh, you dress, you drink from a barrel that smells like goat spit, and you prepare to face what they call the harvest hall. This is when all the weak stone is loaded onto ox carts bound for the cathedral site. You're tasked with helping load several massive blocks into the creaking carts, using nothing but planks, ropes, prayer, and shoulder trauma. The carts are absurd. They creak like haunted houses, the axles are bent, the wheels wobble, and each cart is expected to carry 4 tons of carved limestone on roads better suited to sheep than industrial transport. You and the crew work together using wooden rollers, fulcrums, and synchronized grunting. You count. 1, 2, heave. 1, 2, heave. A man gets his foot caught under a block and doesn't even scream. He just turns gray. Someone slips and drops a stone on his own fingers. You look away. Meanwhile, the oxen are staging a quiet rebellion. They collapse in the mud, refuse to move, or begin walking in the wrong direction. One just lies down entirely. A priest is summoned to bless them. He sprinkles holy water and says, "These beasts are sacred." Someone whispers, "So are we, apparently." And everyone laughs until they realize the priest is serious. After the carts are loaded and rumbling down the road, your next task is pit duty. Now, the pit is not a metaphor. It is a literal hole where poor quality stone is dumped, along with discarded rubble, failed carvings, broken tools, and sometimes unclaimed body parts. You don't ask questions. You just throw things in and try not to fall in yourself. At the edge of the pit, you spot a familiar shape, a shattered luck doll. You blink. There are dozens down there, broken, forgotten, like a graveyard of tiny, silent workers no one cared to bury. You chuck in a useless wedge and feel a chill creep up your spine. Maybe it's the wind, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's the realization that this entire place is a grave. The pit isn't bottomless, but it may as well be. A cautionary tale carved into the earth, a monument to failure. You step away slowly, suddenly aware that one bad foot placement could make you part of the collection. But there's no time for reflection, because the foreman calls you over for one final shift, ridge trimming. This means walking along a high, narrow ridge of cut stone to inspect for cracks before final shaping. It's about 30 feet in the air, with no rail, no safety, and a delightful wind. You carry a hammer, a brush, and your shredded dignity. You climb the stack. Every step is a gamble. Your foot slips once and you flail like a chicken. Below, workers cheer sarcastically. "Fly, bird! Bet a groat he doesn't fall today." You keep walking. Then, you hear the crack. It's soft, like ice breaking, then louder. The ridge shifts beneath your feet. You drop the brush. You freeze. You know that sound. It's collapse. You leap, barely making it to a safer ledge as the section behind you crumbles into dust and thunder. A chunk of stone the size of a kitchen table explodes into the quarry floor. Everyone is still. Then the cheering starts again. Still got both legs, then you're hired tomorrow. You sit, shaking, not because you're scared. Okay, yes, you're scared, but because you've had enough. It's over. You climb down, you walk past the foreman, past the pit, past the carts, the oxen, the shrine, past the half-built pulley tower still dangling like a broken rib. You don't say goodbye. There's nothing to say. You return to your shed. You lie down. And for the first time in days, you sleep without dreaming of falling. The next morning, you don't wake up in the quarry. You wake up somewhere else. somewhere your bones don't ache, somewhere without dust in your lungs or a priest telling you, God wants you to plead for a bishop's vision. You've been pulled from the nightmare. But let's not forget what you survived, because medieval quarry work wasn't just hard. It was a non-stop meat grinder where you were expected to suffer, break, and keep smiling, because the stones had a destiny, and you did not. The cathedral might stand for 1,000 years. Your name? Forgotten in 10 minutes. Your labor? Unpaid. Your grave? Possibly the pit. So next time someone tells you modern life is too soft, just remind them of the job where you climbed 30 feet into the air with a wobbly chisel and a hope you wouldn't be flattened like a pancake by the very rock you helped shape. You wouldn't be crushed because you were weak. You'd be crushed because that's the only logical outcome of medieval quarry life. Thanks for surviving this one with me. Let me know in the comments. Would you make it one day in the medieval quarry? Or would your luck doll shatter before lunchtime? See you in the next historical nightmare. And remember, if you think your job sucks, at least you're not dodging flying slabs with your bare hands. Think you've got what it takes to be a warrior? Big dreams of samurai honor, katana flare, cherry blossoms falling in slow motion as you deliver a fatal blow to your enemy? Cool. Let's throw all that in the fire, because unless you were born into a noble house with a horse, a lineage, and at least 5 different family swords, you weren't a samurai. You were the guy they sent in first, on foot in straw sandals, with a spear longer than your self-esteem. Welcome to medieval Japan, somewhere in the mid-1500s during the chaotic, blood-splattered Sengoku period, a century-long civil war, where everyone with a sword and an ego decided they should rule the country. And while movies love to show us glamorous sword duels and poetic deaths, you're not here to be cool. You're here to be a low-ranking ashigaru, or foot soldier. Spoiler alert, you're going to suffer. Let's start at the beginning. You're a peasant, not a plucky underdog or a misunderstood genius. Just a rice farmer who got conscripted after your lord realized he needed more bodies to throw at the enemy. Your training? About 3 days, maybe 5 if your daimyo wasn't in a rush. Most of that training consists of, this is the pointy end, please don't stab yourself. You're handed a spear, a yari about 10 feet long, and taught how to jab it in unison with 50 other terrified peasants. There is no armor fitting, no heroic montage, just a man with a stick, some yelling, and a lot of blisters. Your uniform is generous to call a uniform. You get a simple jacket, a short-sleeved cotton thing, a conical hat made of lacquered wood or iron, and some leg wrappings. If you're lucky, your lord might issue you a cuirass, a breastplate made of iron plates tied together with string. You try not to notice that it smells like someone else died in it. Also, you have waraji, straw sandals, great for the rice fields, not great for marching 20 miles a day over volcanic rock while being screamed at. The first thing you learn about being ashigaru is that no one cares if you die. Not your commander, not your comrades, not even your mom, who is probably busy hoping your younger brother doesn't get drafted next. You're marched out before sunrise, carrying your gear on your back. Spear, hat, a single rice ball wrapped in cloth, and a small pouch of salt to keep your strength up. Your stomach is already growling, but you know you won't see real food for another 12 hours, if you're not dead by then. Let's talk about that rice ball, shall we? It's made with leftover grains compressed into a dense triangle, sometimes flavored with a pickled plum if your unit is elite. It's hard, it's dry, it tastes like despair. You eat half in the morning and save the rest for nightfall, unless it gets crushed under your breastplate, in which case you lick what's left off your chest like a human raccoon. You arrive at the battlefield around midday, already sore, sunburned, and lightly bleeding from the thighs, because your leg wrappings have chafed through your skin. There is no time to rest. You're thrown into formation, 4 men deep, shoulder to shoulder, with a commander barking orders from behind, like a man who doesn't plan to die today. This is where you meet your first real enemy, horses. The enemy cavalry charges in your direction, giant armor-clad war horses bearing down on you, their riders dressed in terrifying horned helmets with banners flapping behind them. They're screaming, your side is screaming, and you're holding a stick and trying not to wet yourself. The idea is that you and your fellow foot soldiers brace your spears in the dirt, presenting a wall of deadly points that will impale anything stupid enough to run into it. You look to your left. That man is shaking. You look to your right. That one is crying. The horses are coming. The air thunders. Your spear wobbles. You remember that you never actually practiced this part. Then, impact. The first wave crashes into your line. If the formation holds, great. If not, the line buckles, men scatter, and suddenly you're under a horse with a broken leg and a spear stuck in your own thigh. Either way, it's bad. If you fall, someone might trample you. If you survive, your lord might punish you for cowardice. Heads roll for less. And here's the thing, you don't even know who you're fighting. You were told the enemy wears red, or maybe white. You forget. Everything looks gray now. There are banners, but they're unreadable. You stab at anything that charges toward you and pray you don't jab your own side. It's chaos, screams, blood, a fog of dust and human panic. Let's pause for a moment to remember what your medical options are in this situation. There are none. No field surgeons, no bandages unless you rip your sleeve. If you're stabbed, you crawl behind a tree and try not to die loudly. If you're lucky, a fellow soldier might pour sake into the wound. If you're unlucky, they'll just rob you and leave. Assuming you live through the first clash, and that's a very bold assumption, you might be ordered to storm a fortress. This is the second worst thing that can happen to you. The first is being lit on fire. Storming a fortress means charging a wall, while archers rain arrows on you from above. You carry a wooden ladder, sprint toward a moat full of mud and corpses, slam the ladder against the wall, and start climbing. At the top, a man with a sword, waiting to cut off your head as you peek over the ledge. It's like whack-a-mole, but with human skulls. You fall, you scream, you land in the moat, you crawl out. You're covered in sewage. The commander yells, "Again!" You go again. Let's say you actually make it over the wall. Congratulations, you are now inside an unfamiliar compound with no map, no strategy, and no idea who is friend or foe. You hear a war cry, you spin around, and then someone hits you in the face with a tetsubo, a giant spiked club wielded by someone who's been lifting boulders since childhood. You wake up bleeding, disoriented, and minus several teeth. You're alive, but you wish you weren't. You're dragged back to camp that night and thrown near the communal fire. There's a single bowl of millet gruel passed around. You eat quickly, not knowing who will grab it next. There's no comfort, no laughter, just chewing, coughing, and silence. The fire burns low. A man near you is missing an arm, another lost an eye. No one speaks. They just stare at the flames like they're trying to forget what they saw or who they killed. And remember, all of this is just day one. You survived the first day, somehow. Your reward? Another day, just like it, or worse. You wake up with your face in the dirt, a centipede crawling over your ear, and the smell of rotting fish mixing with human sweat. The camp has already begun stirring. Men are coughing, stretching, some crying softly. No one sleeps well, not after what they've seen. And now your body is screaming. Your shoulders are stiff from carrying a spear all day. Your thighs are shredded from endless marching in straw sandals. And your neck? That kink is permanent now. But none of that matters, because someone just blew a conch shell. That's the signal. You have 15 minutes to assemble or face public humiliation, or worse, punishment duty, which usually involves burying yesterday's dead with your bare hands. Breakfast is the same gruel as last night, maybe with some weeds thrown in if someone was feeling generous. You swallow it down without chewing, because your jaw is still sore from getting clocked by a club yesterday. You consider asking the commander if there's any tea. You decide you like your head attached to your neck, so you don't. Today, you're headed out on a raiding mission. No glorious battle, no open field, just low-level mayhem and arson. You're told the objective is to weaken enemy morale by looting and burning nearby supply villages. You know what that means. Stealing rice, terrifying farmers, setting fire to thatched huts, and pretending it's strategy. You're handed a torch and a sack. Congratulations, you are now a foot soldier and a part-time war criminal. The march is long. You move through forests and winding roads, all while trying not to trip on tree roots or slip on damp stones. One man does and cracks his skull on a rock. Nobody stops. The column moves forward. He's left behind. Eventually, you reach a small village nestled in a valley. It's poor. You can tell by the thatched roofs, the cracked rice pots, and the fact that a 12-year-old child is holding a wooden hoe as if it might stop you. It won't. Your group storms in, yelling threats, waving weapons, knocking over baskets. You're ordered to find stores of rice and salt. These are war priorities. You barge into a hut, scare a woman and her elderly father, grab a sack of millet, and feel like the worst person alive. But you also know this. If you don't bring something back, you'll be accused of withholding or cowardice. And that means a beating in front of the entire camp, or worse, execution for dishonor. That's the trick of this job. You do terrible things and pretend it's for survival, because it is. After burning the village rice stores and setting a few houses ablaze, your unit retreats. You don't look back. You don't want to see who's crying or who's chasing after you, begging you not to take their winter supplies. You get back to camp, you're praised. A captain pats you on the back and says, "Good smoke on the horizon today." You pretend to smile, but your stomach turns. That night, there's a storm. Rain pours through your thin tent, soaking your straw bedding. Everything is mud. The fire won't light. You shiver under your damp jacket next to other shivering men. No one talks about what they did today, but everyone saw it. By morning, you're soaked, exhausted, and developing a chest cough that will likely last for the rest of your miserable life. And then comes the big announcement: siege duty. The enemy lord has fortified himself in a castle up on a hill. The walls are tall, the gates are thick, and there are archers stationed behind murder holes. Guess who gets to go up there and poke at it with ladders like a medieval idiot? That's right, you. The approach is slow and terrifying. You carry bundles of sticks to fill the moat. Behind you, archers launch fire arrows for cover, and your own side hurls insults meant to intimidate the defenders. They don't work. The defenders just throw rocks, boiling water, and excrement at you. You slip on the mud, climb a ladder, and reach the top, only to be greeted by a man with a naginata, a curved blade on a pole, which he swings at you like he's chopping wood. You fall, again, into the moat, again. Your leg hits a rock. You can't tell if it's broken, bruised, or if you're just in a permanent state of physical betrayal. Back at camp, you're not treated, you're patched. A medic, and we're being generous calling him that, pours salt water over your wound and wraps it in a scrap of cloth that smells like dried squid. It does nothing. You're told to walk it off. The next day, the commander tries a new tactic, starving the castle out. This means your unit camps near the stronghold, making noise at night, taunting the defenders, and occasionally trying to intercept supply lines. It's a long, boring nightmare of trench digging, bad food, and dysentery. Speaking of which, the latrine situation, it's a wooden box over a hole. It's shared. There is no privacy. The smell is sentient. You pray for constipation. Time passes. Men get sick. One collapses with a fever and is dragged to the edge of camp and left there. You don't ask what happens next. You just tighten your belt and try not to think about how your own stomach has been twisting for 3 days straight. Then, victory, sort of. The castle surrenders, not because of your bravery, but because their food ran out and they ate the last horse. You're ordered to march in and help secure the area, which is code for loot what's left. But the castle is a ruin. The stench of death is overwhelming. Bodies everywhere, flies, a woman weeping over a child. You step over corpses to reach a storeroom full of pickled radishes. You take one, you sit. You cry, but quietly, because someone might see and call you weak. Back in camp, there's celebration. The higher-ups feast. They get roasted boar, sake, song. You get a bowl of cold rice and a slap on the back. One of the captains says, "Next campaign, we'll take 2 castles." You want to die, but you don't. You live, and that's the curse. Because living means marching again, fighting again, stealing again. It means doing things you never thought you'd do, and pretending that it's all for glory, that someday someone will remember your name. They won't. You're a foot soldier, a number in someone else's story, a red smear on a hillside that no one will even notice after the rains come. It's been weeks. You've forgotten what normal feels like. Your sense of time has melted into an endless loop of marching, stabbing, screaming, and praying for rain. Not because you're thirsty, but because it's the only thing that might delay another charge. Your body is a mess. You've lost weight, mostly muscle and hope. Your hands are blistered, your back is warped, and your sandals are disintegrating into foot-shaped straw fossils. You've been wearing the same sweat-drenched jacket for so long it could legally apply for citizenship on your behalf. And yet, you're still alive, which is less of an achievement and more of a punishment. Your next assignment is something called a field maneuver. You don't know what that means, but based on context clues, it likely involves either pointless formation drills or being bait for cavalry again. Turns out, it's both. You and 50 other Ashigaru are assembled on a dry, sun-baked plain and told to simulate a battlefield scenario. this sounds harmless. Until you realize that means sprinting up and down hills in formation while being screamed at by mounted officers who haven't walked a day in their lives since puberty. Your unit spends the next 6 hours performing mock charges, defensive positions, and simulated retreats. Each drill is punctuated by someone falling from heatstroke or vomiting from exhaustion. A man behind you collapses and is stepped on by the man next to him. No one stops. He doesn't get up. The only water you get is warm and slightly gritty, scooped from a wooden tub that smells like fermented socks. You drink it anyway. You also try not to look at the dead fly floating on the surface. After training, you're rewarded with a bowl of miso soup. Except there's no tofu, no seaweed, no vegetables, just cloudy water and the faint suggestion of soybean, like someone waved a miso packet near the pot and then changed their mind. You eat in silence. Everyone does. The mood has shifted. You used to laugh even if nervously. Now it's just quiet. Even the jokes have died. Hope is expensive here and no one can afford it. Then comes the news. Your daimyo is preparing for a decisive campaign. That phrase sounds glorious, until you realize it means your army is going to invade enemy territory in the hopes of taking multiple castles. The campaign could last months. You'll be on the move the entire time. No home, no family, no guarantees. The campaign begins at dawn. You're given half a rice ball and a new spear tip, which you're told to tie to your old splintered shaft because iron's expensive. No one mentions new armor. That's reserved for the guys on horseback with clean fingernails. Marching with an army sounds dramatic in books. In reality, it's thousands of men trudging through narrow mountain passes, slipping on wet leaves and getting bitten by mosquitoes the size of warhawks. You sleep on rocks, you piss in ditches, and you listen to the same 5 war chants over and over until they drill a hole through your soul. Halfway up a slope, a man behind you tumbles off the cliff edge. Everyone stops for a second, then the officer yells, "Keep moving!" And you do. At night, there's rain. Of course there's rain. It finds its way into your ears, your sleeves, your soul. Your straw bedding turns to soup. You huddle under a leaking canvas with 2 other men who snore like dying oxen. You don't sleep. You just vibrate with cold. Then, one night, the army stops near a river. The officers declare a pre-battle ritual. Everyone bathes. You think, great, hygiene. But no, this is symbolic purification. You strip down, walk into the icy water, and attempt to cleanse your sins while pretending not to notice the dead fish floating near your knees. After the ritual, everyone gathers for a pre-battle speech. Your general appears, mounted, shiny, flanked by banners and trumpets. He speaks of honor, loyalty, divine destiny. You are a blade of the shogun, he says, a spark in the divine fire of righteousness. You will either return as a victor or be reborn as a spirit of eternal glory. You want to ask him if spirits get rice balls. He rides off, you stay behind, wet, freezing, ankle deep in mud. The next morning, you march into battle. This one's worse than the others. You're attacking an enemy force that outnumbers yours 2-1. Your daimyo thinks surprise will win the day. It won't. You're ordered to form a spear wall and march forward. You move in rhythm. Step, step, thrust. Step, step, thrust. And then the arrows come. From the left, a volley arcs across the sky like black rain. You raise your shield, or what passes for one, and pray. The man beside you doesn't. He takes an arrow through the throat. He twitches. Then he's still. You march over him. The front lines collide. Spears jab. Swords swing. Someone screams. Could be you. Could be anyone. You feel a blade nick your ribs. Another glances off your shoulder. You stab forward and make contact with something. It's warm and soft. You don't look. Suddenly, fire. The enemy torches the grass. Smoke billows. Visibility drops. You hear shouts, the clash of metal, the whistle of arrows. You can't breathe. You drop your spear. You fall to your knees. You crawl. You're yanked up by a sergeant and pushed forward. "Stand, dog," he shouts, "or die on your knees." You stand, you run. You don't know who you're fighting anymore. You stab wildly at silhouettes. One of them screams like a child. You pretend you didn't hear it. By the time the sun sets, the battlefield is a soup of ash, blood, and broken armor. Your army retreats, not a rout, but close. The officers say it was a tactical withdrawal. You say nothing. You're too busy trying to dig an arrowhead out of your calf with a spoon. Back in the woods, you huddle under a fallen tree and pray the enemy doesn't chase you down in the night. You whisper apologies to the gods, to the spirits, to the man whose blood is still on your spear. Then you pass out. You dream of a rice field, the wind, and the sound of your mother calling you home. But you never go home, not yet. You're still needed, you're still breathing, and that's your only crime. It's been 2 months, or 3, you've lost track. Time isn't real out here, just dirt, marching, more dirt, stabbing, marching again, and occasionally, a reward of lukewarm soup made from what might be turnip peel and despair. Your spear, splintered, your armor, bent, your sense of dignity, long dead, buried under a battlefield, and possibly chewed on by crows. You now sleep with one eye open and both hands on your weapon, not because you're expecting an ambush, but because you're afraid someone in your own unit might steal your shoes. Again, today there's a new announcement from the captains. Castle garrison rotation. You think that means a break? It doesn't. It means your unit is being sent to guard a remote mountain fortress recently conquered by your lord. Translation: you're going to freeze to death in an unheated watchtower, guarding a pile of rocks no one even wants. The journey there takes 4 days, uphill, in rain, with wind sharp enough to flay your skin like a fish. You climb a trail that isn't really a trail. It's a vertical suggestion of mud with bonus leeches and loose stones. One man slips and dislocates his shoulder. Another coughs blood and quietly vanishes behind a tree. No one talks. There's no point. You arrive at the castle half dead. The place is barely standing. Walls cracked, gates splintered. The last defenders were burned out or slaughtered. No one's cleaned up. You step over bones. You sleep in a corner near a collapsed beam. You try not to breathe too deeply. Guard duty consists of standing on a wall, freezing, staring into the forest, and praying you're not forgotten. You're issued a horn in case of attack. You consider using it just to see if anyone's listening. You don't. The last guy who blew the horn for fun got 5 lashes and a bowl of spoiled rice. The days drag on. You run out of wood, then food. The officers tell you to ration smart, but your rations consist of boiled moss and the occasional lucky rat. One night, a man roasts a sparrow over a candle and eats it whole, bones, feathers, and all. No one even blinks. To stay warm, you huddle together with 5 other ashigaru in the remains of a burned hall. You don't talk, just breathe and try to remember what it felt like to not be cold. One night, someone starts singing an old folk song. You all join in, voices cracking. It's the only moment of beauty you've had in weeks. Then come the rumors. The enemy is regrouping. Another lord wants the castle back. Your garrison is outnumbered 10 to 1. Reinforcements, weeks away. Maybe. The captain gathers you and gives the worst motivational speech of all time. Hold the gate. Die if you must. If your head is taken, make sure it's pointed toward the enemy. You stare. He's serious. You spend the night reinforcing the walls with mud, rocks, and wishful thinking. You sharpen sticks. You dig pits. You pray to every god you can name. And a few you make up on the spot. Then, just before dawn, they come. Drums in the distance. Shadows in the mist. Enemy soldiers, dozens of them, swarming like ants down the ridge. You grab your spear. You take your place on the shattered wall. You brace. The first wave is arrows. You duck behind a rotten plank. The man next to you doesn't. He falls. His helmet rolls off. You watch the light fade from his eyes. Then the gate shudders. They're battering it now. With logs, with fire, with rage. You rush to help brace it. Hands splinter, shoulders groan. A man beside you pisses himself but doesn't stop pushing. The gate cracks, splinters, gives. The enemy pours in. You fight, poorly, desperately. It's not about skill now, it's about survival. Your arms are lead, your legs are noodles. You swing your spear like a drunk fisherman trying to slap the ocean. Someone slashes your leg. You fall, someone else screams. Then, silence. You open your eyes, you're on the ground. It's over. The enemy didn't kill you. They assumed you were dead. You stay still. Hours pass. Finally, night falls. The survivors limp out of the woods. Your unit is gone. The captain, head on a pike. The castle, in enemy hands again. You crawl away. For 3 days, you stumble through forest, eating bark and drinking from muddy puddles. Eventually, you find a road. A merchant cart offers you a ride for your helmet. You give it up without a word. You return to camp, filthy, broken, and somehow still breathing. They barely register your arrival. no parade, no promotion. Just a clerk who writes your name next to returned and hands you half a rice ball. That night, you sit by the fire and look at the stars. You wonder how many of them are spirits of men like you, forgotten, chewed up, spat out by a war they never wanted. You think about home, not the battlefield, not the barracks, home, the rice fields, your family, the smell of soup, the laughter of neighbors, the feeling of sunlight that doesn't mean death. You'll never see it again. Your Lord has another campaign, and you're still breathing. So, do you still want to be a samurai? Because unless you were born noble, trained in martial arts from birth, and carried a family crest on your armor, you were never a samurai. You were the body behind the blade, the filler, the meat shield, the ashigaru, the guy who dies first and gets remembered last. Honor? No. Glory? Maybe, for someone else. You were a tool, a footnote, a weapon with splinters in your palms and diarrhea from undercooked millet. And when the war ends, and it eventually does, there's no pension, no parade, no land grant, just silence. You go home, if you're lucky, with half a leg and memories no one wants to hear about. And when your grandson asks if you were ever a samurai, you lie. Because even you want to believe the story. But deep down, you know the truth. You were cannon fodder, in sandals, with a spear, and no chance in hell. Ever complain about your 9-to-5 job? Fluorescent lights, annoying coworkers, bad coffee? Great. Now imagine doing that job at age 12, surrounded by toxic chemicals, in a room full of explosive powder, for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, with your jaw slowly disintegrating. Welcome to the real Victorian grind. The year is 1850-something. You are poor, filthy, possibly orphaned, and the only thing standing between you and the workhouse is one glorious opportunity: employment at a match factory, specifically one that makes white phosphorus matches. They call them lucifers, not a red flag at all. You think, it's just making matches, how bad can it be? Let's start with the hiring process. There is no resume, no interview. You show up at the door with hollow cheeks, ratty boots, and a face that says, "I won't die immediately." If you're under 15 and have all your limbs, congratulations, you're hired. Your job? Sitting at a wooden bench for 12 hours a day, dipping matchsticks into a paste made of white phosphorus, potassium chlorate, and powdered glass. You are not given gloves, or a mask, or instructions. You are told simply, don't spill it, don't breathe too deep, don't die. You sit shoulder to shoulder with other children, dipping and drying, while a foreman watches from the corner, chewing on a pipe and judging your productivity by how fast your stack of matches grows. Slowness means docked pay. Clumsiness means injury. Talking, forget it. Talking gets you smacked with a stick. Let's talk about the phosphorus. It's white, crumbly, and smells like garlic mixed with death. At first, you don't notice. Then your eyes start to burn. Your nose runs, your gums ache. By the end of the week, you feel like your entire skull is trying to exit your body through your jaw. That's called phossy jaw. It begins with a toothache, then the jaw swells and oozes pus, then bits of bone literally start falling out of your mouth. Your breath smells like rotting corpses, and your coworkers can tell. Not because they're doctors, but because several of them already have it. The factory doesn't care. If your jaw is falling off, they move you to the back room, so customers don't see. If you're lucky, you get sent home. If you're unlucky, you die at your bench, and they toss your body out with the sawdust and sulfur scraps. But hey, you got a wage. Well, technically, you earn about 2 shillings a week, enough for 1 loaf of bread, some scraps of coal, and maybe a shared bed in a vermin-infested boarding house. If you're a child supporting a family, you stretch that into miracles. If you're alone, you blow it all on gin and forget your jaw is dissolving. The factory is lit by gaslight, unventilated and full of dust that can ignite spontaneously. You are surrounded by open trays of chemicals, paper drying racks, piles of matchsticks, and other children just as miserable as you. One wrong move, and the whole place could go up like a Guy Fawkes bonfire. And oh, it does. Fires are common. Explosions? Even more so. If someone drops a tray of phosphorus near a candle, it's over. The room fills with screams, smoke, and the smell of burning flesh. The fire bucket is a lie. The fire drill is to run. You survive your first blaze. You only lose part of your sleeve. The girl next to you? Her hair is gone, and so is her left ear. She's back at work the next day because she has 5 siblings and rent is due. By now, your skin is pale, dry, and always itchy. Your fingertips are yellowed. Your nails are cracked. You cough black mucus into a rag and hope it's just soot. It's not. The phosphorus is working its magic on your insides too. Then comes your first real mistake. You drop a dipped match on the floor. The foreman sees. He walks over slowly like a shark smelling blood. He doesn't yell. He picks up the match, throws it in the bin, and grabs your shoulder. His voice is calm, almost gentle. "That's 3 today," he says. You try to explain. Your hand slipped. You're tired. You haven't eaten since yesterday. He nods. Then he slaps you across the face so hard your head hits the table. You fall to the floor. The other children don't look up. This happens 5 times a day. You're given no break, no medical treatment, no sympathy. You're told to get back to work or go home and never return. You get back to work. The worst part is, this is still better than most jobs available to the poor. At least here, you have walls. Sort of. And when it rains, only half the roof leaks. Outside the factory, things aren't much better. You walk home past rows of brick slums, through alleys filled with coal dust, horse dung, and the occasional corpse. You keep your head down. You're too tired to talk. You're 12 years old and already older than your parents ever imagined. You curl up in your bed, a pile of rags next to a chimney pipe, and try to sleep. Your jaw throbs. Your hands twitch. Your dreams are filled with fire. Tomorrow you do it all again. Because in Victorian England, match girls don't quit. They die. Or they start revolutions. But we'll get to that later. You're back at the bench. Again. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Sitting in a room so thick with phosphorus vapor, it practically glows in the dark. You've stopped flinching when you hear coughing fits around you. It's just background music now. Someone collapses at our table? That's just Monday. Your body is in open rebellion. Your jaw still aches. There's a sore on your gum that hasn't healed in 2 weeks. You touch it gently and feel a softness that should not be there. Your teeth are loose. You haven't smiled in days, partly because you forgot how and partly because the pain is unbearable. Phossy jaw isn't Rare's here. It's the factory mascot. One girl, Mary, used to be sharp as a tack. Then her cheekbone turned green. Now she drools through a cloth tied around her face and no one sits near her at lunch. Not because she's scary, just because the smell is too strong. Lunch, by the way, is cold bread and water. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it's bread and not mold. If you brought food from home, you hide it, otherwise someone might steal it. Or worse, report you for hoarding. The supervisors are watching everything. You're not allowed to lean or chat or look tired. Doing so marks you as lazy, and lazy workers get instructive attention. This usually involves a thick stick and a foreman with a grudge. One girl fainted from the heat. They poured a bucket of water on her and made her finish her shift. They say the factory is cleaner than most, which is true. If you don't count the rats, the constant chemical fog, or the blackened windows sealed shut to prevent drafts from disrupting productivity. You haven't seen daylight in 3 weeks. Your internal clock is now regulated entirely by bells and fatigue, and yet match work is considered a privilege. You're inside. You're not sweeping streets or hauling coal. You get actual wages. 2 shillings a week, paid in coins so filthy you can smell typhus on them. If you're a child, and most of your coworkers are, you hand the money straight to your mother, who thanks you and then cries when she thinks you're not looking. She knows. Everyone knows. This job is killing you. But what else are you going to do? Be a maid and get assaulted by your master? Work in a textile mill and have your fingers snipped off by a loom? Starve? There are rumors. Some say the factory owners know phosphorus is poisonous, that they use it anyway because it's cheaper, that red phosphorus is safer, but they refuse to switch because it costs more. You don't know if that's true, but you do know this. The boss doesn't have black teeth, and he doesn't smell like garlic. The boss visits once a month. He walks through in a fine wool coat and clean boots, looking like he's inspecting a museum exhibit. He smiles at the girls, says how proud he is of your dedication, and then leaves without touching anything. You hear he lives in a townhouse with glass windows and a piano. You've never seen either in real life. One day an inspector shows up, not for safety, for taxes. He walks through with a notebook, counting benches, checking ledgers, and occasionally poking a girl with his umbrella to see if she's awake. You want to scream at him. You want to ask how this place is legal. Instead, you keep dipping, because rebellion gets you nothing, at least not yet. You've been here 6 months now. Your health is unraveling. Your gums bleed. Your teeth wobble. You cough at night and taste blood. Your joints ache. You try to remember what fresh air smells like, but all you get is the sulfur sting of death, and then something changes. It starts with a girl named Sarah. She's 17, loud, and dangerously smart. One day she stands up and refuses to dip. Says her friend just died of phossy jaw and that she's not going to rot away for 2 shillings a week. The room freezes. Everyone looks up. The foreman storms over, red-faced and furious. "You ungrateful brat," he shouts. "You'll never work in London again." She says, "Good," and she walks out. You think it's suicide, but 2 days later, she's in the newspaper. Match girl strike looms. She's gone to the press. She's told them everything. The jaw rot, the starvation wages, the fires. A journalist actually listens, then a social reformer, then a union man, and then all hell breaks loose. Girls start whispering at the benches, notes are passed. Meetings are held, you're terrified. If you're caught, you'll be beaten, or worse, blacklisted, but it's too late. The factory isn't just a workplace anymore, it's a powder keg, and guess what? You're the spark. One morning, Sarah returns, with dozens of match girls. They form a line outside the gates. They shout, they chant, they refuse to work. It's a strike, the first real one by women, poor women, teenage girls, and it's working. Inside the factory, everything is chaos. Some girls refuse to enter, others cry. The foremen are shouting, the bosses panic, and you make a choice. You put down your tray, you walk out, you join the line. For the first time in your short, miserable life, you feel powerful. Of course, this doesn't fix everything. The strike is met with threats, slander, and police harassment. Papers call you radicals, priests call you ungrateful. The bosses say they'll never negotiate, but people notice. The public begins to sympathize. The newspapers print your stories, and the pressure builds. After weeks of picketing, shouting, and hunger, the factory agrees to some demands. They won't eliminate white phosphorus, not yet, but they promise better conditions, a raise, safety inspections, actual soap. It's a start. You go back to work. Nothing's perfect. You still dip. The chemicals still sting. But now, there's hope. And Sarah, she becomes a legend. You keep dipping, but your head is higher now. You return to the factory through a different gate, one that now bears a small, crudely painted sign, observers only. It's meant to shame you, but all you feel is oddly triumphant. You step over the threshold and face your old bench. The wood is scarred, stained, and still slick with phosphorus residue. You sit down, you dip your first matches in weeks, and it feels like you're shaking hands with a monster you once conquered. The promised raise arrives in your pay pouch, a whole 6 pence extra per week. It's almost laughable, but when you think of your family, it's lifeline. You feel guilty for caring about money when so many of your classmates have lost jaws, eyes, or lives, but you're alive, and you need bread. The boss, Mr. Ashcroft, stands on a raised platform in the center of the hall. He wears a clean collar and a smug smile. "We've heard your voices," he says, loud enough for every child's ears to ring. "We will consider further safety improvements, but remember, we are the backbone of this industry. Without us, civilization would be plunged into darkness." Then he taps his cigar on a desk and walks away, leaving you wondering if sarcasm ever tasted like acrid smoke. You glance at Sarah across the room. She's leaning back, arms crossed, watching the foreman scurry around anxiously. She catches your eye and gives a tiny nod. It's the rebellion signal, a secret handshake that says, "We did this." You dip another match. The paste coats the wood in slick white. You've been warned not to taste it, but the sting in your throat tempts you. Just a tiny lick, you think. No. You force your tongue behind your teeth. The work resumes. The new safety improvements consist of 2 cracked windows that let in a draft and a bucket of coarse soap at the foreman's station, intended for emergency gargling, they say. The windows are too high to reach without standing on chairs, and the soap smells like rotted fruit. You laugh softly, but a cough interrupts you. At midday, you file out into a courtyard where Sarah has set up a makeshift meeting. A handful of older match girls cluster around, and 2 men in suits, union organizers you suspect, stand off to the side, looking nervous. You join the circle. Sarah speaks without fuss. "They gave us 6 pence, they'll give us more. But we need an independent inspector, and medical care on site. And most importantly, a switch to red phosphorus within 5 years, or we walk again. You nod. You can practically taste the red phosphorus. Safer, doesn't eat your bones, but costs more. The men in suits take notes. One whispers, "That's ambitious." Sarah spits on the ground. So is walking out. The crowd chuckles because nothing's more dangerous or ambitious than a strike led by 12-year-olds. After the meeting, you return to the bench with new purpose. Every dip, every flick of your fingers, you imagine the sweet day when white phosphorus will be outlawed, when no child's jaw rots, when women like Mary and Sarah can live without fear of bone fragments falling into their cups of tea. Afternoon drags on. The air is cooler, bless those new windows, but still thick with poison. You've memorized every cough, every ache. You know your body better than anyone. You know this work will kill you sooner or later, either through phossy jaw, chronic lung disease, or a factory fire that consumes you faster than you can scream. But you aren't a helpless cog anymore. You've tasted collective power and you crave it. Every 10 minutes you steal a glance at the foreman, who now glance warily at your group. You catch one writing names in a black book. You wonder what that book means. Are they plotting revenge? Blacklisting? Firing you under some petty rule? You finish your matches quickly and push your tray aside. At quitting time, you rise with the rest. The foreman's stick is gone, replaced by a half-hearted clap from Mr. Ashcroft, who greets you with false sincerity. "Good work, girls. Keep up the dedication." The phrase tastes like iron. You head for the exit. Outside, the factory whistle blasts, sending pigeons scattering. You inhale fresh air and feel it fill your lungs, tinged with soot and coal smoke, but still a gift. You walk down the cobbled street with Sarah and a few others. The newspaper boys shout headlines, "Match girls win partial victory," and "Phosphorus poisoning exposed." You scoop up a paper and carry it home like a trophy. That night, your family gathers around a small fire in your cramped back room. Your mother's eyes shine as you read aloud the day's events. Your little brother beams, thinking you're a hero. You try not to flinch as your jaw throbs. You swallow tea that tastes like hope and soot, and for a moment, you almost forget this place is a prison. But the next morning, the factory gates reopen. You line up, you dip, you breathe poison, and you whisper to the girl next to you, "Tomorrow we fight again." 2 weeks later, a fire breaks out in the bleaching room. It's the worst blaze in years. Flames shoot through the rafters, and phosphorus vapor ignites in midair, creating a sickly green inferno. You're working on the edge of the hall when you smell smoke. You look up to see the rafters ablaze. Screams echo. Girls run for the doors, knocking each other down. The new fire buckets, 5 black leaky tins, are useless. The hoses don't reach. Water buckets themselves are contaminated with phosphorus, making them explode on contact. It's chaos. You grab Sarah's hand and run. You feel heat lick your back. You hear the roar of the flames and the crack of falling beams. You almost fall, but catch yourself on a stack of matchboxes. Outside, terrified girls huddle in the yard. One is on fire, her hair, her clothes. Another is screaming for her mother. You look around for Mr. Ashcroft. He's gone, safe in his office, no doubt. Firemen arrive, if you can call them that, and unleash hoses that spray water mixed with chemical runoff. The inferno shrieks and recedes, leaving charred wood and smoldering bodies. You watch a girl's slipper melt away on the pavement. She doesn't notice. After hours, the blaze is out. The factory walls stand, but inside is cinder and bone. 20 girls are hospitalized. Another 15 are missing. Mary's gone. The foreman announces, "Business as usual tomorrow." You laugh bitterly, but you know no one will show up. The horror of the fire, and the strike still simmering, means the factory is temporarily paralyzed. The bosses are negotiating with reformers. Parliament is buzzing. Families in London can't ignore headlines of children burned alive and maimed by their wages. In the lull, you see a pamphlet handed around, "Matchworkers' Rights, a proposal for safety and justice." You read it and dream. A world where factories can't poison children, where bosses answer to law, not profit, where no one dies for 2 shillings a week. You slip the pamphlet into your apron and return home. Weeks stretch into months. The factory limps along under stricter inspection. Some machinery is installed to automate dipping, reducing direct contact. Glass goggles are issued. You break yours in a scuffle over lunch. A company doctor visits weekly. He prescribes brine gargles and patent medicines he sells. They advertise their benevolence in local papers, but everyone knows it's all cover. Still, every match you dip feels like defiance. Every breath is a reminder you survived another day. One morning, you arrive to find a sign, factory closed until further notice. You and the others cheer until you remember. No factory means no wages, no bread, no rent. You scowl. You've won safety, but at what cost? The owners claim it's temporary while they install new equipment. In practice, it drags on. Weeks pass. Some girls drift away to other jobs, textiles, domestic service, street hawking. Few survive long in those fields either. You stay. You keep hope alive. You attend meetings. You write letters to MPs. You teach younger girls to read. You tell your story in classrooms and churches. You become more than a match girl. You're an activist. Eventually, the factory reopens, branded as the new improved Ashcroft & Sons Matchworks. The windows are bigger, the benches are spaced out. The phosphate is supposedly sealed away in vats so no one has to taste it. But you know better, sealed vats leak. Glass goggles crack. Foremen still carry sticks. On reopening day, you walk in with cautious optimism. You dip the first match. It glows, it snaps, it works. But when you bring it close to your nose, you taste the faint bite of phosphorus. You cough. You look at the foreman. He nods. Welcome back. You realize this fight will never end. But you also realize neither will you. Because surviving a match factory is not a one-day triumph. It's a lifetime stand. You arrive on reopening day to an oddly festive atmosphere. The factory gates are festooned with bunting. Red, white, and blue ribbons fluttering in the industrial breeze. A brass band plays Rule Britannia off-key. Investors and local dignitaries mill about, patting themselves on the back for modernizing the works. You, however, stand apart with arms folded, watching the spectacle. Inside, nothing feels entirely new. The benches are a bit cleaner. The vats of white phosphorus are supposed to be sealed, and there's a sign proclaiming safety first in freshly painted letters. Yet when you step up to your station, the scent is unmistakable. That garlicky, choking tang of phosphorus still hovers in the air. You swallow against a bitter lump in your throat and begin dipping matchstick after matchstick, each one a reminder of the fight it took to get this far. Weeks turn into months as you settle into this half-reformed factory. The new equipment reduces some direct contact with phosphorus, but it breaks down constantly. When it sputters, the foremen simply wheel the old trays back out, and you revert to hand dipping until someone bothers to fix the machinery. The promised goggles arrive, but they're flimsy and scratch easily. You patch yours with leather scraps. You're told to bend over carefully, so the vapors don't pool in your face. But there's nowhere to bend that doesn't send shivers down your already aching back. The company doctor now makes weekly visits, though you suspect he's more salesman than healer, since he peddles patent medicines that cost a week's wages and taste like turpentine. You watch him swirl his stethoscope around your chest, mutter something about bronchial complication, then prescribe a tonic of quinine and brandy that you're ordered to share with 6 other girls. You pretend to drink because refusal might jeopardize your new privileges. Outside the factory walls, the world has begun to change. Parliament debates a factory act that mentions matches in an appendix. A few inspectors, real ones, show up unannounced, poke around grimy corners, and issue citations for poor ventilation, inadequate lighting, and child labor. You clap eyes on one inspector taking notes with a quill and nod appreciatively. But rumors swirl that some judges dismiss phosphorus cases as occupational hazards. Then something extraordinary happens. The first batch of red phosphorus matches rolls off the improved assembly line. They're called safety matches because, unlike the old white phosphorus, ones they only ignite on a specially prepared striking surface. You hold one gingerly, its head a pale pink, and strike it on a porcelain tile. It ignites with a satisfying whoosh, leaving behind none of the stench or glow. Cheers ripple through the factory. You share excited looks with Sarah, who has just returned from a speaking tour of reform societies. She's wearing a pleated skirt freed from arsenic dyes and carries herself like a queen, fit to address crowds about child labor laws. You whisper, "We did it," and for once believe it. Yet the victory is bittersweet. The plant management announces that white phosphorus matches will be phased out over the next year. But in the meantime, they'll continue producing both types. Some foremen grumble that safety matches are too expensive, and a few kids on the night shift still handle white phosphorus because the new equipment can't keep up with demand. You refuse those shifts, and you're reassigned to quality control, but only after threatening to strike again. Your wages inch up another sixpence, but by now you're accustomed to measuring bread in farthings. Still, the extra money buys you a modest clearing of debt to the pawnbroker, and that feels like freedom, however small. The public is watching. Newspaper articles quote your name. Miss Ellen Harper, match girl and reformer, they write, crediting you with pushing Ashcroft and Sons to adoption of safety matches. You blush at the attention. You've always been more comfortable behind a bench than on a podium. But you also realize you have power now, and you intend to use it. So you organize a small union of matchworkers, men and women, to meet in the back room of a temperance hall. You draft a charter demanding complete abolition of white phosphorus, 5 days' work for a livable wage, and an on-site infirmary staffed by trained nurses. You circulate your petition through factories across London, and signatures flood in. Tailors, textile workers, and even some dock laborers offer support, seeing your plight as emblematic of a broader injustice in Victorian industry. The employers grumble, the press calls you political agitators, and a few anonymous letters threaten violence if you don't back down. But while the law can be slow, public outrage can be swift. Pressure builds, and within 2 years, Parliament passes the Phosphorus Matches Prohibition Act, outlawing white phosphorus entirely, one of the first times a dangerous chemical has been banned due to worker activism. Factories either convert or close. London's match industry is forever changed. You're invited to give testimony before a government committee. You speak without flourish, clear, steady, truthful. You describe the rows of children at benches, the coughs, the abscesses, the fires, and the lethal lunches of stale bread. You do not cry, you do not hesitate. And by the time you finish, the august panel is slack-jawed, some members dabbing at their eyes. You leave the hearing room to murmurs of applause. By the time you finally leave Ashcroft and Sons, now rebranded with none of the old family on the board, you've spent nearly a decade in match factories. Your jaw aches less thanks to new dental techniques and clean paste. Your lungs still rasp, but you breathe easier knowing no child will ever again be sacrificed to white phosphorus. You marry a former dock worker named Samuel, whose hands are scarred from loading timber. You settle in a small house in Bermondsey. You have 2 daughters, both born healthy, with strong teeth. You teach them to read and write, to value their voices, and to never ever accept a job that eats away their bodies. On the anniversary of the Act's passage, you attend a ceremony at the rebuilt Matchworks. A brass plaque now proclaims, "In memory of those who suffered for a light, may we never again let profit extinguish humanity." You lay a wreath of lilies at the foot of the plaque. You think of Mary, Sarah, and the dozens of friends who died or vanished in the haze of white phosphorus. You vow to keep fighting for safer workplaces everywhere, because you know the next hazard is always waiting around the corner. As you stand there, the factory gates open, and young workers in clean uniforms stream out, striking safety matches on porcelain boards without fear. You smile, thinking, they'll never know how close they came to a time when a match was a hand grenade for the body. And you whisper, just loud enough for the breeze to carry it, "I lasted more than a day, but no one should have to."